Hello, everyone. Today, you will hear an interesting story. I was lucky. I was born into a normal family. Unfortunately, my mother had a difficult birth, and after I was born, she could not have any more children. So she gave all her tenderness to me. I grew up a happy child, bow in my parents' love, but my parents' love was not fanatical. They understood that I could grow up to be a complete spoiled egomaniac, not adapted to the realities of life. There were plenty of examples of this kind around, and my mom and dad did everything they could to teach me how to live independently in the world around me. My mother shoved me into various sections and clubs, which I didn't stay in for long. But in 7th grade in a pioneer camp, I heard the guitar and fell in love with the instrument. In the fall, I asked my mom to enroll me in a music studio where they taught me to play the guitar. Mom, remembering my lessons in clubs and sections, were skeptical of my request, but finally signed me up for classes and paid for a 6-month course. After high school, I joined the Army, figuring that the Army training would come in handy in life. After serving my time, I went home as a sergeant major. A girl was waiting for me in my hometown. Frankly speaking, I did not expect that she would wait for me and would not marry a rich man. But she waited for me. I rested from military service for almost a month and then got a job at a machine tool factory as a turner. At the same time, I went to the Polytechnic University as a part-time student. I decided to become a mechanical engineer because I felt an attraction to technology. And of course, I married the girl I loved. On December 6th, we got married, and in September, Michelle gave birth to a son whom they called Yuri, just like me. Michelle was the exotic name of my beloved wife. A year after the wedding, she was finishing her studies at an instruction college and was going to enter a specialized university. I had a goal-oriented wife. We lived on average income. We didn't live in poverty or glamour. I worked at the factory, and in the evenings I played in the restaurant, supplementing the family budget with extra income. I helped Michelle with the baby as much as I could. At night, I got up to feed the baby. Sometimes warming baby food in hot water, I would fall asleep with my head resting on the dining table. As time went on, my son grew older and Michelle prepared for exams. In August, she left for Capital City. A week later, I already knew that she had passed her entrance exams and had been accepted to university. And I decided to quit my studies in order to give my wife a chance to study. While Michelle was chewing the granite of science, I washed diapers, drove my son to clinics, and did what mothers usually do. I deliberately gave up my career to let Michelle pursue her dream of becoming a civil engineer. Finally, my wife got her diploma and returned to her hometown. My son was 6 years old by that time. And we were going to school. Michelle found a job in a design firm, which soon turned into a successful construction firm. Michelle was in fact our capable, if not talented, engineer. 5 years later, she was seated as Deputy Director of Capital Construction, and a few years later, she became Vice President of company and a 30% shareholder. My wife went from being just a girl to a successful businesswoman. I still worked as a turner and played the occasional restaurant the evenings, unfaithfully trying to realize my unfulfilled dream of becoming a musician. The years flew by at the speed of a career train. The time came. Euro graduated from high school and was preparing to go to university. He decided to become, as I had once done, a mechanical engineer. My wife managed her company with a steady hand and was firmly established on the board of directors. She also tried to lead the family. Lately, Michelle was advising me in every way to change my occupation, hinting transparently that she was not satisfied with life with a simple turner, a man not in her social circle. At one time, she strongly suggested that I work in her company, but I categorically refused to change anything in my life. I was satisfied with everything. At work, I was appreciated as an excellent specialist. Evening music making warmed up my soul. My son and his successes were a joy to me. I should say that my son and I were very close. He shared all his secrets and mysteries with me. I was The first to know that he had a girlfriend and that their relationship grew into a great love. The girl was really very pretty with one flaw. She was from an orphanage. When Michelle found out, there was a scandal in the house. It's your upbringing. You indulge you in everything. What girl? That mongrel of a mongrel? My son deserves better than that. My friends have wonderful daughters to marry or do you want him to be a common the boar like you? At these words, I stood up and silently left the room. And I said to my son, think for yourself. You are an adult and this is your life. Whatever you decide, I will support you. Several times, I accompanied my wife to social events. But I did not know anyone there, and I caught a contemptuous, astonished looks of well-groomed men and women. Not my circle. I had nothing in common with them. Michelle sent this and stopped dragging me along. By this time, we had moved to a country house. But soon you were left for the capital and our house was empty. My wife and I were left alone. I was already 46 and Michelle a year younger. His 45th birthday, she decided to celebrate with an unprecedented scale. She bought out the best restaurant in town for a whole evening and invited guests from her circle. My wife and I stood at the entrance to the banquet hall and greeted guests. Or rather, she was greeting and I was just collecting gifts and giving them to her assistants. I saw him immediately. He was a young man in a strict creme suit, which fit his athletic figure well. His tan face was perfectly shaded by his blonde hair, fancy perfume and a haughty sarcastic look. It was in relation to me. He looked at Michelle with lust and love. He held her hand in his making a congratulatory speech looking her straight in the eye. Then he kissed her fingers and gently squeezed her palm. Then he turned toward me imposingly. You have a charming wife. Take care of her. Carelessly nodded and went to the other guests. I looked at my wife. Her eyes shone with happiness. Seeing my somewhat perplexed look, she condescended to me and explained. This is our client Edward Shumsky. We are building a residential complex for him. At that she was very far from me and her thoughts. All night, Michelle hovered around admirers. Shamsky too did not leave her side. They chatted nicely, danced, talked to the guests. I had the impression that my Michelle had forgotten that she had a husband. I could hardly wait until the celebration was over. From my corner, I saw Michelle say a warm goodbye to Shamsky walking him to the exit. That's when I realized I was losing my wife. You just can't cheat the heart. There was more to their relationship than just a contractor relationship. A month after my wife's birthday, I was coming home from work. A larger black car loomed in front of our house and a man and a woman were kissing passionately. She wrapped her arms around his neck and seemed to have her lips in his mouth. You know, I was not at all surprised when I recognized the woman as my wife. The lucky beau was, of course, Mr. Shamsky. Suddenly, Michelle saw me. She sharply recoiled from her lover. Euro, are you? She stretched out in disappointment. I took her hand. Michelle, let's go home. I tried to take my wife away. Buddy. Can't you see she doesn't want to go with you? Shamsky said in a contemptuous and mocking tone. Two bodyguards appeared from behind him. Let the woman go and get out of here. His tone became menacing. Michelle was silent. And you do not forget that this is my wife. I tried my best to control myself. But I was already approached from two sides by Shamsky's guards, and I snapped. I let go of Michelle's, and turned around and kicked one of the muzzleloaders in the kneecap with my right foot. Simultaneously, undercutting him, the heavy carcass fell to the pavement with a crash. I turned sharply toward the second and stepping to my left, struck him in the bridge of the nose with my right hand. The bodyguard flew sideways hitting his head on the body of the car. From the corner of my eye, I saw the driver trying to get out of the car with a baseball bat. I kicked the door open and the brave man collapsed on the seat, clutching his broken nose with his hand. It all happened so fast that the sweet couple didn't realize anything. Shamsky looked at me with his mouth hanging open, terrified, expecting me to get him. Michelle clutched at his sleeve with both hands. Yara, go home. I'll be right there. Her voice trembled with excitement. Do not make a slaughter. I turned and went into the house. Without undressing, I went into the kitchen and tried to pour myself some vodka. My hands were shaking so much that I had to drink from the neck. Michelle appeared in the doorway. We need to talk. You bet we do. Yara. I met a man. She was silent, gathering her thoughts. And I fell in love with him. We've been together 6 months. I don't want to deceive you anymore. I'm going to him. I'll explain everything to my son. I think I deserve a little female happiness. You're good, but you're stuck in place. You have no prospects. With you frankly bored, we have outgrown our marriage, our relationship. She was silent again, waiting for my reaction. But I stubbornly remained silent. I want to be with me was a successful man. A man with whom I have common interests. A man. I interrupted her emotional monologue. Do not waste words. It's clear. Go on. I stood up. That's it. You won't tell me anything else. Michelle was clearly disappointed. What am I supposed to say? Advice and love? I looked at the bottle. Wait. I'm going to leave now. You can live here. This is your place too. In short, Michelle babbled on and on. We can stay on good terms. We've been together for 1/4 of a century. We're not strangers. I regretfully looked at the unfinished bottle and left the house without saying anything. It was impossible to keep Michelle, and there was no point. They say you have to fight for love. Bullshit. Love either exists or it doesn't. Everything else is pink snot. It's a shame about the wasted years. Although, I didn't get drunk, didn't fall into a groggy stupor. There was only one feeling in my heart. Resentment. I really didn't understand how she could leave someone I'd lived with for so long. Why? It was clear. I was not up to her level with my education, my manners, my showing off. I didn't even have a college education. Kill yourself over the past. What was the point? There was no going back. And what's the point? It was easier to cut that period out of my life and try to start over. 46 years is not a sentence. I spent the night at my parents' house. I did not tell them much about my misfortune, and they did not ask too much. My mother, of course, was upset, but she didn't bother me. I hardly slept at night. I smoked through the window, inhaling the cigarette smoke diluted with cold air with pleasure, and gathered my thoughts. In the morning, Euro called me. Dada, you divorced. His voice sounded anxious. What have you gone on a bender? Daddy, you're not a boy. Talk to your mother. Apologize at last. She'll forgive you. She loves you. Eura, it's more complicated than that. It's not about me. She found someone else. There was so much grief and disappointment in his voice that I inwardly shuddered. Son, don't be so hot. She's still your mother no matter what happens. She loves you. Everything that happened was about our relationship. I tried my best to reassure my son. We are one, you and I. Everything that concerns you concerns me. I grew up in your arms, and I won't leave you for the sake of this. Euro didn't finish choking with rage. Papa, don't worry. She's not worth it. I'll be there soon. Then Michelle called. Yura. What's with all the whims? You're a grown-up. You have to accept life as it is. Why should we quarrel? She started in her mentor-like Tom. Why did you leave? This is your home too. I didn't kick you out. I passed out. It was unbearable to listen to it. Michelle called again and again. In the end, I turned off the phone. 2 days later, son arrived. Dad, I was at Mom's. I tried to talk to her, but she called this her. She said she had no secrets from the man she loved. That's what she said. Love her. How's that? Why is she doing this to us? He fell silent. Tears rolled from his eyes. Her boyfriend kept smirking, and then he hugged her. He was overwhelmed with emotion. I don't have a mother anymore. I hate that bitch. I didn't try to change his mind. Let him decide for himself. 2 months later, we were divorced. 6 months later, Michelle married Mr. Shamsky. She tried to get in touch with Euro. But he didn't answer her calls. The wedding was a big affair. It was celebrated in the pochest restaurant in town. Mr. Shamsky got a great trophy. A sea of guests, popular pop singers. All the high society was at this wedding. Except they say the bride's mother cried all the time and went home early, taking her father. And the son refused to come. Although Michelle made every effort to get him there. Even Shamsky himself came by to see Euro asking for his mother's support. On the evening of that day, when the wedding was thundering, I was walking along the alley of an abandoned old park. It was getting dark. The chilly northern wind was trying to tear the clinging yellow leaves from the wet asphalt. The street lights were lit. I walked leisurely along the sidewalk soaked with drizzling rain, betraying my shadow like a baton from one streetlight to another. I felt sick to my stomach. I felt disgusted that I had lived so long with a deceitful woman. Surprisingly, I was calm. No despair or regret. I had received a good inoculation from family life, but I could not predict how things would turn out. Dear listeners, please like and subscribe to our channel.